Welcome back to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Tom Collins, Executive Director of the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission.
And I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director.
So Gina, you're pushing through a head cold to be with us today, so I appreciate you pushing through here in this election year to make sure we're bringing people this roundup.
Yeah, it's that time of year. Is it a head cold? Is it a sinus infection? Is it allergies? Who knows?
I mean, I have had the worst allergies in the last week that I have ever had in my life. It's been tough.
It has been tough. Plus all that grasshoppers. I mean, I walk out my door and I'm inundated between the allergies, the pollen, and the grasshoppers.
They're everywhere, actually. And I haven't read the articles yet, but do you know what the deal is?
They basically just said because of the heat and because of the rain we got a few weeks ago that they're coming out earlier than usual. So it's that time.
So here we are in March, and since we're already thinking about May, July, and November, and so are the grasshoppers because they're ready to go. Speaking of the calendar, Monday was the last day for candidates running for state and federal offices to turn in their signatures they need to qualify for July's primary. Gina, what can we tell folks about that?
Yeah, so candidates, they have to qualify to get their name printed on the ballot. Monday was that deadline to turn in their signatures, their petition signatures, and their nomination paperwork. So we are updating the Clean Elections website to have all of those candidates listed there. So you could check our site, azcleanelections.gov, probably in about a week or so. Because even though Monday was the deadline to file, that also means we are now in the challenge period. So folks that filed, they could find themselves subject to a candidate challenge, which basically means somebody is attempting to kick them off the ballot.
And that's trying to say, like, either the voter who signed your petitions wasn't registered or doesn't live in the district, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or even the candidate themselves. They could try to say doesn't live in the district, or the candidate themselves is not qualified to hold office. So it could be a number of things.
And by the way, if you are interested in candidates who are out there still seeking clean funding, that deadline doesn't arrive until July. So you can still go onto our website to access the eQual website and find out what candidates are seeking clean funding. So, Gina, last week we had a great chat with Supervisor Lena Fowler from Coconino County, and we really dug into how counties support voters, especially when it comes to the issues that are front and center for local residents.
There's environmental issues, sacred sites on these public lands. Those are very important to tribes. And because that's where, on public lands, we still go to collect herbs to be able to collect food and also to make our offerings, and also just the infrastructure. So these are issues that is not uncommon to rural communities. Rural communities also have sometimes low turnouts because they don't feel like sometimes they're being heard or their issues are not being addressed. But these are the roads, the housing, those are all issues that are right front and center for tribes and rural communities.
Right. And Tom, she gave us a really great reminder that within Coconino County, Native voters participate in two elections, the state election and the Navajo Nation election. That means a lot of coordination, especially given our new statewide primary election date.
We're working with the Board of Elections with Navajo Nation to change the date to July 21st because it is really important that we people don't have to come back twice to vote. It's better that we all vote at the same time, and Navajo Nation is working on that right now.
Tom, one thing Supervisor Fowler brought up that we didn't get to really dig into was precinct-based voting. So all Arizona counties, we have precincts in them. And some of our counties utilize what's called a vote center, and very few actually use what we call a polling place voting model. So now most of the state does use vote centers, and some of our counties actually use a hybrid system, but every voter, you live in a precinct. So the county, they're designating your home address in a specific precinct, and that determines what your districts are. And all of this is determined to build your ballot and show which districts and which candidates you're eligible to vote in. So I think at the end of the day, it's important for voters to know, do I live in a county that is utilizing a polling place voting model or a vote center voting model, or is it a combination of both? But again, voters, we've got your back. You can check all of that on our website just by entering in your address into our voter dashboard. And for our voters who actually have a non-standard address, you don't have to enter in a standard address into our voter dashboard. You can actually just use your GPS coordinates. So that way you can still access all of the information that is specifically for your voting district.
And I think it's an important distinction there to be drawn, right? Because what Gina mentioned there is that precincts are the building blocks to build the districts that essentially tell you as a voter who is representing you. So vote centers basically says if you live in the jurisdiction of, say, the county, you can go to any place that's offering voting and you can vote there. And those counties that still use precinct models, you had to go to the literal precinct and polling place in which you lived in order for your vote to count. But the process of actually voting doesn't have anything to do with that. So you could vote anywhere, and that's what the vote center model recognized. In other words, voters aren't being limited in getting to vote because they didn't go to a specific building at a specific time for a specific place. So I think that by and large, election administrators and voters both see voting centers as a more effective and efficient way to both financially for counties and other jurisdictions, but also for voters, because you can vote on your way into work, vote on your way home from work, all those kinds of things.
And, Arizona is just so geographically diverse that each of our 15 counties, right, they've got to make a decision on what works best for their voters. And so I think, with Supervisor Fowler's point, thinking about our counties that have tribes in them and, what are some of those challenges to voting? Maybe we have non-standard addresses, or maybe, you have to have certain infrastructure available to have a vote center. And so maybe that's not always available in some locations, which is why that hybrid model of having both polling places and vote centers works well. But I think at the end of the day, voters, the most important thing you need to know is if you want to vote in person, just know where to go. And again, checking out our dashboard, all you have to do is enter in your address and we'll tell you, here's your county. Here's the voting locations. This is either a vote center model, which means, hey, pick any one of these locations you want, or here's your assigned polling place and you can only go to this location. But again, that's all if you want to vote in person.
Right. And we know, 80% or more of voters are going to be voting by mail, we expect anyway.
That's right. Most of Arizona voters, they prefer voting by mail. So basically what that means is those ballots are going to go out 27 days before an election. They hit the mailbox, and voters, you can get your ballot in the mail, vote it at your convenience. And we always encourage you, return it as early as possible. That way we can get our results as fast as possible as well.
This week, the U.S. Supreme Court had an argument about a challenge to a Mississippi law that said that, so long as your ballot that you're mailing back was postmarked by Election Day, there's a grace period. And something like a dozen states or so have that kind of a process where your mail ballot only has to be postmarked on Election Day. In Arizona, you need to have that ballot back. And so you'll hear, and you've always heard from Arizona election officials, we need to get that ballot in the mail. We recommend at least a week before Election Day because it has to be at your county recorder by 7 p.m. on Election Day when everybody else's ballot is in.
And, for our voters, especially the ones that participated in these March local elections in Tempe and Pima County, thanks so much for turning out to vote. These local elections are so important. You can check out our website. We've got links to the results through there. And also, we have an upcoming May election as well. So voters, you can see the information there. Tom, I think you were saying that Tempe was going into a runoff.
Right. So Tempe had a primary, and in city primaries, often, you'll see a primary where the city council people will win outright, right? They'll win sufficient number of votes that there's no need for a runoff or an election. But in Tempe, there will be a runoff for 2 of the seats on the Tempe City Council. And then coming up on the heels of May, we'll have our July 21st statewide primary. So make sure to double check your voter registration status, and you can look for a link to that, or you can always go on our website at azcleanelections.gov.
That's it for Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Gina Roberts.
And I'm Tom Collins. We'll see you next week.